Yes, this is the ghetto. Showing up now.
Hey, what's up? And welcome to Let's Do Lunch with me, your host, Nate. I have done this. I've started this standout series in conjunction with my normal radio show, the Artist Exchange radio show that comes on every Monday and Friday from at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I'm doing this one to really spotlight some really important issues and to kind of mix together my two passions, and that's helping people, talking about hot topics, and of course eating. But I'm sorry to my guests for today, but this was really supposed to be me sharing and stuff like that. But I'm on a different journey right now because we're all in a quarantine. Really try to eat cleaner, and I've taken meat off the table. I'm 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 a little heartbroken because I want some Popeye's chicken right now while I'm talking to you. But the first place that I went to, and I kind of started already. Sorry, but uh, as you can clearly see, but this is the dancer potato, and they have all these different variations of potatoes with different toppings on them, and all of them are named after a different city or state in the United States, and they have a specialty from that state. Like Baltimore has an Old Bay one that has like crab meat and stuff like that on it. But this one that I chose is the veggie one, and this is weird to me because I've never ordered anything vegetarian off a meal other than a salad. But over the last couple, month or so, I've been ordering more vegan options. And now we have specialty restaurants that really cater to vegan and vegetarian lifestyles. And it's still really good. It was a baked potato, and it had broccoli and cauliflower and some spinach and corn, and it had this nice season. It had onions and green peppers, and I really started eating it before I started doing this. So sorry, Alma, sorry, Isaiah, but it's delicious. I got you on the come around. But today's topic is really geared towards an issue that is near and dear to my heart, and it's something that I've kept kind of secret for a number of years. And so, without further ado, the topic for the day is Lil Boosie, and the idea of sex as a rite of passage, and that's RITE, and not necessarily it's my right to do this, but sex as a rite of passage, specifically for black men, young black men, and in a world where we use it as a rite of passage for young black men, but a whole card or a weapon against young women. And I have two guests. We had two other guests, and hopefully they'll tune in. But they were both victims of this, one woman and one man, and they both actually a couple, and they were really uncomfortable with um, discussing their point of view. And maybe we'll get them on in a different time because they both actually represented two different perspectives, and they both have children. So that is the point, and they don't feel comfortable with me sharing that, but they wanted to kind of pull back from kind of publicly speaking about it right now. So we're going to probably try to get them on soon, or do another series, a part two to this with maybe with the two of them. And my experience with this is one, I was a young child that was molested, and I felt the pressures of being forced into a sexual situation with an adult when I was a teenager with a young lady who was also my same exact age at 16. And I felt the pressure of performing, and we actually had a threesome at the age of 16, and it's nothing that I'm personally proud of. And at that moment, I felt because of the environment that we were all connected with, it was a workplace environment. I felt the pressure of going through with it because I didn't want to be talked about or laughed or joked or whatever that idea that 16-year-olds have about caring about what the world thinks. And it really shaped how I approach people and sex. Most of the people, and one of my friends are actually on this show today about it, which isn't always a good thing because you make more mistakes when you're being private than when you're out in the open. Normally, people can check you when you're making public stupid. My camera went off. Oh, there it goes. But I have to preface this by saying I don't blame anyone, uh, but I realize in going over this little Boosie situation that there are people that we need to uh, admonish or punish because this behavior is not healthy. In that situation, when I was 16, I know me and that. Well, I can't really say I know what she was feeling. I know what me and her talked about, but I don't know if that was really her true feeling because she felt like that this is just what this how things happen. And on that night when it happened, I was really embarrassed because this person who was the adult in the situation that was probably like in his mid 20s to mid to late 20s took advantage of both my sensitivities and her vulnerabilities at the same time. And I think I was more embarrassed because this person was connected to a family member, my aunt. And I was really embarrassed because I thought he would say something to her fiance at the time and he would tell my aunt. And I didn't even think I would get into trouble, but I felt just embarrassed. And when I found out my uncle knew about it and did not check him or didn't do anything, it created distance between me and I think family members because I didn't. It wasn't something that I asked for. It wasn't something that I thought was what I wanted. Now, fast forward to well, in conjunction with that, this happened after I had been molested. So Topple 36 say shaped and formed my my personality, the way I approach one that's always kind of on the side when it comes to people. And those things shaped how I saw people, how I dealt with people, how I trusted people. And this issue came to be, it's been steadily growing, and I've been hearing it and reading it and following the coverage of it on social media and many of the other platforms. But I wanted to have it in a different perspective. And I'm unfortunately all three of us kind of are on the same side of it. And I don't think this is a situation where we have to take sides, but something has to be done. And I'm learning that CPS had been called on little boo. They're not going to do anything because somebody's not going to snitch, or the children are probably older now and they have probably already been brainwashed. Those other children that aren't here speak up. I hope the mothers of those children that he's referring to speak up. But it's a little too late because you all knew it was happening. Nobody, if he's this vocal about it now, nobody, it wasn't secret. But my guests are here. I'm going to welcome them both in. Today we have a really good friend of mine, Miss Big Mama Ama. She'll be joining us today. And this gentleman, Isaiah Heath, that I kind of ran into in terms of when I was trying to follow the story, and he had posted a couple messages in dispute of a little Boosie, and I'm really eager to hear what their perspectives are and how they what their take on this issue is, and we want to come up with some solutions. I don't want to just argue the issue, but I really want to talk about how we can be of use in terms of helping other young people not to go through this, and kind of curving this issue of men having this rite of passage, getting rid of that, and it's not healthy. Um, I must say, it's please share this out if you're watching. I see Miss Jackie. Miss Jackie is watching. Thank you for tuning in, Miss Jackie. Please please tune in. Please continue to share, and I really appreciate you for your support today. So, without further ado, I'm going to bring on our two guests, and we're going to talk about this. Miss Big Mama Ama and Mr. Isaiah. Let me fix the screen a little bit so we can all be on. There we go. Here we go. How y'all doing today?
Doing good. I'm doing well.
I know personally, Alma is not too happy in this situation, and Alma has two boys. She's a mom of two boys, and she has
Yes.
brothers and a bunch of
Yes.
us male friends. So I
Mm-hmm.
saw the mother and Alma kind of leech out there, jump out there, and talking about this. Can you share with us? Your your initial observation or your initial feeling when this issue became kind of a surface issue.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of funny the way it came about, right? Because Boosie said this in response to Dwayne Wade's choices on
Yeah.
what is and is not my place for my son and his development, for my child and their
Just
development.
speaking out on it.
Right.
Hmm.
And so in opening that, which is something I'm very, very grateful, honestly, that this is something that happened, because this is something that has always been a part of I've always known that this is a part of some people's narrative.
Hmm.
My brother is handsome as he is, love him so much. He's a athlete, which means he hung out with jocks. And then
Hmm.
I went to a performing arts high school, which means the other individuals I was in school with, we did work to get there and did work to stay there. So our
Hmm.
attitude and approach to high school was different than where he went to school. It was a neighborhood school. So it was just, these are the same kids I've been going to school with since I was knee high to a grasshopper. They went to elementary school, middle school, high school together for the most part. They'd all been together their whole lives, right? And
Right.
so there were some experiences that they all had that were the same, that were different than my brother and I's experience, because of how we were raised and who raised us and the
Right.
environment in which we were raised, right?
Right.
So I remember my brother telling me about three or four of his fellow high school students who had gotten caught up under statutory rape,
Mm.
and having that conversation with and I'm having that conversation with him and understanding what they went through, and how some of those stories may or may not have been true, blah 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 blah, right? So knowing that part, and then also being a teenager who wants to go into entertainment, you spend a lot of time talking to other people who are in the business, or who have family members, or who are parents of children who are also in the business.
Hmm.
And I remember very clearly having a conversation with one of my closest aunts, my aunt Evelyn, and she's her and my mother together, having this conversation with me and saying, listen, there are women who will do the same to you as a man will, and they get away with it because they're women and nobody thinks to look at them that way.
Right.
So understanding that both sides of that, understanding that some things happen because of your circumstances and your situation. Your parents may not know better, right? And then understanding that some people that women also get the opportunity to get away with it under the radar,
Right.
because like in most situations, women are much more accomplished than men are doing whatever it is they're doing. It's just
Right.
one of those things, right?
Hmm.
And not to brag, because I absolutely do not.
Condone it.
My
Honestly.
fun right now, my two fundamental things are: an adult has no business engaging sexually with a child. Gender be damned. None of the rest, gender don't matter. An
Right.
adult has no business engaging sexually with a child. My other thing is the point of parenthood is to protect innocence, because adulthood comes, period. So why not give your child the opportunity to just be a child, think like a child, act like a child for as long as possible, because that is precious. It doesn't last forever, and nobody gets to stay in it. And if you do, you hurt yourself more. But if
Hmm.
you people cling on to it because they never got it. So why not give your child the opportunity to be just that? Why take them through what you went through? But then that's the next thing, right? Is understanding that this experience I had hurt me more than it helped me. Because that's what I'm realizing is the real issue. Is a lot of people don't even see that they're hurt. They have rationalized that they have, I remember talking to my homegirls who were my homegirls and friends who allowed themselves to be involved with older men. Now, my dad I've always been on a college campus. So 20-some-year-old boys, A, weren't new to me when I was in high school, and B, I had no interest because you aren't much smarter than I am. I know that. I've been around long enough to know that you're not much smarter than me. There isn't anything you're going to say to me that's going to change my world.
Uh-huh.
But I watch these other girls be caught up, and I'm like, what do you know? Why? There's nothing that he's giving you that's making you better. You're giving him everything he wants, and he's giving you nothing in return except filling your head full of bull. And it's one of those fine lines, because a lot of times what they use are compliments to make you feel good about yourself because nobody else does. But isn't that part of the issue, right? As a parent, if you are not pouring into your child, you are the stars and the moon. You are everything. There is nothing you can't do. There's nothing you can't accomplish. You are beautiful. If you aren't pouring those things into your child, somebody else will. And what is their intention? And
it's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate that it's a norm. And
right.
You didn't preface that by saying you were in the South, and that idea that a young black man would be accused of raping or molesting someone kind of doubles in its severity.
Right.
It's not just becomes a legal issue; it becomes a racial issue and a
almost
community
always
on top of that.
Yeah, no, definitely. Young teenage black boys definitely are more likely to be convicted of statutory rape, even if it's someone in their same class who is their exact same age. Their parents, sometimes whether the parents want to push charges or not, especially in the South, the police are going to push it because they want to make sure that this boy is labeled. We want to make sure that we've got at least one good strike against him.
Right.
It's a fine line.
I want to bring in quickly Mr. Isaiah and get his initial reaction or response to hearing this. And this wasn't new. This wasn't new information. Preface that by saying, but Little Boosie had began to do all these rants, and the Wayne Wade issue became kind of the first time people perked up and started listening, because it didn't sound right, or it became I'm on this side, you on this side type of issue. But Isaiah, first introduce yourself and let us know who you are, and also give me your initial reaction.
All right, so yeah, my name is Isaiah Heath. I'm 29 years old. I'm from the Bronx. My initial reaction was, how could he admit that he was doing this to his children and to his nephews and not be in jail? 12-year-olds, I agree. 12-year-olds have no business being with an adult sexually. And if they are with an adult sexually, it's rape. It's not sex. It's not, because children cannot legally consent to that. So it's not sex. And that's the mistake that people make. They call it sex. It's not sex. It's rape. People don't call it what it is. Now, if this was a 12-year-old girl with an adult male and their parents had paid a escort or whatever to perform a sexual act, we would be trying to take we would be trying to take their head off. The problem with rape is people only see it as males can only do it to females, or men can only do it to women. Women can't do it to men. And then this argument that I've been having online for the past couple of days, rape can only happen if it's physical force. They don't take into account the fact that, children are being groomed by adults, and they're being convinced, and they're being asked over and over and over again, that there's a lot of mental gymnastics to get them to the point where they are, where they think it's okay, and it's not.
And he made an argument. against Dwayne Wade, saying children don't know what they want. Children can't possibly know what they want. Speaking on Dwayne Wade's daughter, not understanding what sexuality is and how dare he let a child determine what they want to be. And it was it was really confusing to me to hear him say that, because in the same the clip that I was watching, he talked about making a decision to give his children a birthday present or a rite of passage of getting them and his nephews a prostitute. And he made mention that she was a grown woman, and it was weird to me that that was a norm, that that was comfortable for him to kind of in the same breath say children don't have the right to choose, and you just took your child's choice away from them. And of course, a 14, 15-year-old boy, that sounds interesting, that sounds fun, that's what I would want. But why would you then allow that to happen in the space of, and the argument what you just said makes sense to me, the idea of molestation versus rape. I struggle with defining both of those two situations that happened to me in life, and it was two single situations where I felt like I was molested or raped. I still couldn't define it. And then the situation where my supervisor kind of pushed me into having a threesome with him and another young lady. I didn't even consider that being um, molestation or wrong. I just saw it being something that I did not want to do in that moment, and it had nothing to do with sexuality, or it was just I didn't want to do, because I could tell grown. I didn't realize the reputation that he had already. I didn't take any of those things. Even in talking about this, it made me recall that moment outside of the molestation moment, and it was I didn't see them as the same thing until this became a topic, a hot topic. For you, I'm gonna let you go real quick, Amma, but I want to ask Isaiah real quick. In terms of being a black man, was this something that you saw or had experienced, or was it a thing at all, even if it wasn't for you?
I mean, definitely. From a young age, really ever since I could remember. Probably my first experience with like sex and being pushed to have sex with like older people, or to even have sex at all, happened when I was 12. Sorry, I'm on my phone. Let me. I'm trying to decline calls. I don't know why people are calling me. But yeah, 12.
Hey,
12
dude,
years
you on the
old.
internet? Sorry.
But yeah, 12 years old. That's probably the first time that I remember being pushed to like have sex. Like I had older male cousins when I was in
Mm-hmm.
school, like junior high, high school. I was on the football team, and that was the thing to do, to go out and have sex. Oh, and if you're not having sex with a girl, you're gay.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
people want to use sexuality against you, that anything that's outside of the norm, which I don't know why it is the norm for kids that are coming of age to have sex in the first place. But the thing is, if you're not doing that, then you're gay, or there's something wrong with you, because you should just be interested in having sex. And the older the person is that you have sex with, the more pats on the back you're going to get, the more, you're going to be congratulated for that.
Right.
And people just don't allow you to be kids.
Go ahead,
I'm
Amma.
done though. Go ahead.
I kind of think that engaging in sexual behavior at that tween age is almost, and this might be an unpopular opinion, but it's almost an American thing. It's almost, you when you think about the history of people in this country, right? People of African descent were subjugated. There are multiple stories written of accounts of slaves being brought from West Africa across the slave trade, and young girls not making it back. Some women not making it back, making it here. Some women not making it here because of the treatment they received on these ships coming across. And so then now you are now beholden to a master, and you are now doing whatever it is that he deems necessary for you to do at the time. And if you think that young girls aren't part of that, you're crazy. Not only were young girls, but men and young boys, because that is the nature of power. Absolutely, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so now we have a culture of underage prostitutes. The movie Taxi with Robert De Niro and Jodie Foster. That's her name. She played a 12-year-old prostitute. So that was not uncommon. It wasn't like he said, "You're a what? Oh my God." He was like, "Okay, you're just another one of those little girls out here doing what she hold on, let me get my gotta do, right?"
Right.
So we've moved from we've moved from that not becoming taboo, but something that is now looked at as a rite of passage, right? You are a mature young lady if some grown man is interested in spending time with you. And that, I know a lot of my friends were seduced by by being given that thought, having those thoughts planted in them. Oh, you so mature, girl. Oh, you so smart. Okay. And I couldn't tell you why. Maybe it's because I spent my whole life on a college campus, but I just was never, okay, yeah, I know these things about myself. Into them isn't pouring that kind of love into them the moment someone who does. And now they're a predator. You think someone's trying to do something good for you, but what do they say, that the road to hell is paved with good intentions?
Right.
That's one of the realities about Boosie. He said that thinking in his mind, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is how it's supposed to be. One of the first things I did was I went and I called my brother, because like I said, this is very much a part of his life. He spent time is friends with people who think like this, with people who grew up like this. So I wanted to make sure, I wanted to have the conversation with him and see where his head was. Now, do I think that he would have been okay with what Boosie did? Hell no, never ends. Who of your friends thinks like this? What are you saying to them to get them to understand that thought process is incorrect? Got stuck on, well, if they, Mr. Brown or A Trey, this is how I'm feeling, this is what's going down, I'm gonna do. No, because they did a whole movie, the 40-year-old version. The whole freaking point of that movie is everybody crosses that bridge when they come to it, in their time, when it's time for them. You can't push someone, because pushing them automatically creates a very specific idea in their head of what it is. And it's either something that they were okay with or something they were absolutely not okay with. And now you've got a split. Because one of the issues with children is that children are very black and white. They begin to understand the gray areas as they grow, as their mind develops, that, oh, this is okay, this falls in this area, this falls in that area, right? When you introduce a child to something that has a lot of gray areas in it, sex has a lot of gray areas. With their black and white thinking, you distort that development. You mess that up. They can't take the steps they would have now. And now you got someone who, and you get all kinds, right? You get someone who completely closes up. You get someone who just jumps out there without any safety net or any thoughts of what safety is. And it's very hard to find somebody who is forced into introduction who finds middle ground, because we have to begin to understand that what happened to me wasn't okay. Now I have to begin to deal.
And we have to understand that these things I always say, for young women, there's always been, this has happened to everybody from the beginning of time, but there's always been services for women to be able to have those wraparound or preventative or subsequent incidents from happening. But for men, it's not set up that way, because even the most conscious thinker, just look at some of the comments that I saw on the post that you posted, Isaiah, the post that we've been seeing and been commenting on. There have been people on both sides of it, and they're well intelligent people who really feel that it's a dude, like that's what's supposed to happen. Like, you must be gay if you don't want to get your dick sucked. Like, but the idea that I'm saying to you, somebody who has physically been pushed into a situation like that, it was very uncomfortable. But the uncomfortable feeling wasn't even having sex. That was something I wanted to do. It wasn't something that I felt I was prepared to do or I should have been in that situation. But the uncomfortable feeling was what people would think. And I remember us cleaning up, going back to the workplace, and feeling like, man, he about to tell somebody. And he did tell people. And it was more so a congratulatory. I don't hate my family member now, but I hate that family member for congratulating me versus saying like, no, we about to go take care of this right now. Because clearly I was a child. Like I wasn't somebody who knew what the world was at that point and understood things. I had been me in a whole nother direction in terms of how I treated women, how I treated myself, how I treated, people around. It could have got ugly in many different directions, but I went the opposite way, and I just grew into myself because I was uncomfortable with sex. And as I said in the beginning, I'm a contestant. Even when we get on sexual topics, I'm out of the conversation. There's no confirmation from me. There's no like, I wonder. And this what nope, I don't have a feeling on that because it's something that I felt was taken away from me at too young of an age. Isaiah, in terms of what you saw in terms of your communications online, how did you feel about the comments on the other side of the field?
The comments, I don't know. A lot of the comments, it was based in misogyny, like rape, and it can only happen towards women. It can only happen if there's physical force involved. And pretty much everybody was going by like, okay, well, if you don't agree with what Bootsy is doing with his children, you're gay. If at 12 you didn't want to do that, you're gay. Oh, I remember when I was 12 and I wanted this and I wanted that. So a lot of what people were doing, they were projecting their memories and their particular situation. They were projecting it onto everybody. Like, okay, at 12, since I was interested in sex, and I'm
everybody
straight, that means that everybody else needs to be interested in sex. But they didn't want to acknowledge that, okay, well, if you're 12 years old, you probably shouldn't be interested in sex in that way. Nobody wanted, like, when you brought that point up, nobody wanted to discuss that. They just wanted to say, okay, well, since that's the way it is and that's the way that I was brought up, that's the right way.
Yeah, I remember the first time I ever heard the term sucking dick was I was 12 and I was like, what's that? What's the dick? I don't even know what that is. Like my parents had done an excellent job of protecting my innocence and allowing me to be a child. And then once I found out what it was, I was like, oh, that sounds nasty. I have brothers. That sounds nasty. I don't want nothing to do with none of that. And then because I was allowed to develop on my own and begin to, and then, minds have changed. So, it is what it is. You have to give people the opportunity to become those things, to understand and grow into it, to find, to develop their own natural curiosity. I mean, I had no desire in what I understand as sex now. Now, then I definitely was interested in kissing boys. I wanted to hold hands. I wanted a boyfriend. But that was at that was it. That was, if I had a boyfriend and I could hold his hand and kiss him, ooh, I'm doing something, and that for me, that makes sense for a 12-year-old. That, holding hands and sneaking off in the corner, maybe kissing here or there, but not a whole, beyond that. For me and my experience in the way that that my parents taught me and protected me, that, I also, my parents were also foster parents, right? And so I met more than my share of children who had been done all kinds of wrong. And so I also work with that filter, right? I'm extremely, extremely protective of children. I personally, I can't believe that it blew my mind that people thought would even begin to think that that was an okay thing to have happen. So yeah, but you know, yeah.
I'm worried because I think a lot of us are kind of combining a lot of issues that is happening right now. This specifically because I'm one of them people that think in sheltering our children, we open the door for things like this to happen. But what happens when the person who is in charge of fostering that education and those foundations in children are the very people that are victimizing the children, they're causing the problem? Like, what happens then? Like, I'm not a person that like put them in jail, because that does nothing but reversing the problem. Right. But these people need to be forced. A lot of people are pointing out, and I agree with it, something has happened to this person to make him want to extend that or continue that legacy of introducing have been molested. And one in particular, a family member, my aunt, and I see her, and this person is still in our family, and they come around, and I see my aunt turn into this child every single time she's introduced to this person or around this person, not even in direct. How all this information is now put out when children are introduced to sex. Sex is natural. You know, puberty happens, you start getting, as men, we start getting certain types of dreams and certain types of feelings. So the idea of having a desire is natural and normal. But when we begin to act on those desires, that's when the problem comes in. The problem really is when people are forcing that to happen for you. Like, that's an issue, that's a problem. And that's why we have laws and rules that govern when children are allowed to say, I want to have sex, and they're allowed to go out and do it. Like, there are rules and not just morality laws, but actual laws put into place that say, that you can't have sex with this child. Like, period. And people are, when it comes to young black men, it's a different rule, it's a different standard. I don't want my child to grow up to be no fag. So I'm gonna make sure he gets what he's supposed to get early. So he ain't out there doing XYZ and being introduced to Dwayne Wades and such. I'm not only angry about this, it really has pissed me off to see the people who I know personally who feel that this is okay. It was okay for him to do this. It was okay for him to have to go through. The comparison between him and Dwayne Wade, how did either of you, and also Isaiah, the parenting comparison that was then being put on the table in terms of who's the better parents?
I mean, I thought it was very stupid. I mean, you can't compare one to the other. I mean, I'm not going to get on here and say that I am an expert in like gender and, you know, sex reassignment surgery, and literally all of the information that I found, it was for bringing up Dwayne Wade's child. Can children even get sex change operations? Like, that's where my mind went. So like going on Bible information and being able to read it for comprehension, most of the time children can't go get a sex change. Like, they're treating it like, okay, Dwayne Wade's child comes to him and decides, okay, I want to change my gender because I don't feel like I'm the right gender. And then you can go out and go get an operation tomorrow.
Right.
Like, you can't, for number one, you can't do that. There's a lot of assignment surgery. All Dwayne Wade ever said was, I'm going to support my child no matter what. I'm drawing the line in the sand. I'm going to support my child no matter what.
It felt like he was trying to be ahead of whatever this backlash was going to be on him. If that's what it felt like to me.
I mean, yeah, maybe he was trying to get in front of it. But I mean, I think I mean, I did listen to an interview that he did. He said that he came from a very like homophobic family, and like when growing up and in his early adulthood, he was homophobic too. So he didn't understand anything about it. But he knew that he didn't want to throw his child away like people were expecting him to do.
Right.
So it's
or hide his child. It felt like, to me, whatever you choose to do with your child, please all I ask is have the better interest of your child in mind when making decisions, and not just for right now, not for your own personal ego, but for the longevity of your child. How would this usher? And like you said, I tried to do that same research, and one, his child wouldn't have been able to even think about a sexual reassignment until they were 18, based on what the laws are for children. I mean, for adults, the psychological evaluations, having to live as that gender for a certain amount of time.
Right.
It wouldn't even be possible for a child to make that decision. And there are laws that say that can't happen because people have done it and went through with it and now regret it and had to go change it back. It's surgery. So it's not just, I'm going to get a tooth extracted.
It's not a pill you stop taking.
And when he jumped out there and made the assumption based on what he thought Dwayne Wade was doing, that made me feel that's something in him. I'm not claiming he's gay or anything of that nature. I'm saying something has happened to him, and he's not being forthcoming with it, and it's showing its face in his remarks. And I don't want to just harp on him. I'm harping on many of the men that I personally know, many of the women who I personally know, who have a problem with Dwayne Wade and not with Boosie. Like, I have a fundamental problem because many of those people have children. And I can imagine how they're now rearing their children. It's scary to me to even think that. Alma?
Yeah, I grew up in a Christian household with conservative parents. Not like super conservative, but conservative personally. One of the realities of being in entertainment is you are going to be around people who are going to think differently, move differently, have different experience, because the art is that it is the imitation of life. And those of us who feel like our story is going to help somebody will take whatever journey using whatever medium we need to in order to express that. I strongly feel that those of us who choose to be artists and to express ourselves artistically, it's because we understand our stories help other people, and sharing what has happened to us matters. I think it is incredibly sad that we still struggle so much, especially men struggle so much with sharing what has happened with them, accepting that what happened to them wasn't okay. It amazes me how we just convince ourselves it's all right. This needed to happen because if this didn't have X, Y, Z, so
it's gonna make you stronger. That's
right. There is. I mean, it's across the world. I mean, there are tribes where people they used to send the girls off to learn to be ready for a husband. So it is an issue that we all as human beings have to understand. I remember you brought up something that made me think of one of my favorite songs as a teenager was a song on the first Best of Both World albums, called The Power of the Pussy. And one of the verses, the man says, "Man, I was about 7 when I had my first," and I was like, 7. And even then I was like, that's way too young. That's way too young. But it was just, and my father was like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "What do you mean your father was like, yeah? No, he should have been so upset that this happened to you. He should have been mad." And I mean, the way the verse, it's hip hop, right? So there's a certain amount of machismo that goes along with it. But that whole verse to this day, then and now, to this day, disturbs me. And I struggle with liking the song the older I get. But I go back to it. I think about it all the time. And all I can do, all I want to do is protect, because my child will be 7 this year. And the thought that somebody would, what? I go to a place right now that scares me when I think of if. And so, I mean, I have those conversations with him right now. Good touch, bad touch. Who's allowed to touch? Who has no business touching? How do you feel? I don't want to hug nobody. Okay, fine. You ain't got to hug nobody. I'm not going to make you do that. That's not my place. Right. If you're not comfortable, I'm not going to push you. No, that's not my place. Okay, well, maybe I can ask. If I feel like you should be comfortable, let me ask the question. Why aren't you comfortable? Or why do you not feel comfortable around this person anymore? Why do you not want to hug this? Like, what? Talk to mommy. Tell me what's going on. And it could be he's just not in the mood to be dealing with people today. He's a Sagittarius. We switch sides. Sometimes I don't want to deal with nobody. Sometimes he just don't want to deal. And as a kid, unfortunately, a lot of your interactions with adults are, give me a kiss on the cheek. Come give me a hug, baby. Come, let me look at you. Let me. Okay. Sometimes you don't want to be bothered, and I get that. And I will support him in his understanding of what his rights are when it comes to his body and what is and isn't allowed. I also understand I need to teach him, because little kids are little kids kissing on the playground because they see their parents tickling and touching. They want to tickle and touch too. No, you can't do that. That's not that's not the kind of touch. I told you nobody can touch you that way. That means you can't touch nobody that way either, period. Keep your hands to yourself. And these are things that you have to. It's not comfortable. Do you think that was fun? That's not a fun conversation to have. But you have to. You have to have those conversations with your children. And you have to have them now. Because if you're not, somebody else is. And God knows what they're telling them.
And that's the part that I'm getting out of this. I'm going to ask you, Isaiah, what do you think should happen at this point? I mean, not just a little Boosie, but to anybody who does this, what should the repercussions of this be?
I mean, as far as punishment goes, definitely you should have some kind of.
I don't like the word. I don't like the word punishment.
So solution oriented. So should we be solution based? Okay. So solution based, I really honestly think that people should have like court mandated therapy, number one, to kind of explore what happened to them in the past. Mm-hmm. They should be, forced to go to like victim impact panels like a drunk driver does. Like if a drunk driver goes out and kills somebody, the court mandates them to go see victims of people that have, died due to the hand of a drunk driver. So there should be victim impact panels where you have, young men and young women speaking about their experiences. Right. And I mean, I guess as far as like, solutions go, they should probably see, the impact of their harmful thinking and the way that they may be raising their children. Like some people just don't know better. And some people are going to raise children based on how they were raised. In the Black community, I feel like we have to be able to, have conversations like, okay, I love my parents and I respect my parents, but everything that they did wasn't right.
Right.
Yeah.
And in the Black community, I feel like we're afraid to speak up on that because we feel like we're being disrespectful or we feel like we're being grateful children. But it's okay to say, I love my parents, I love my mom, I love my dad, but everything that they did wasn't right for me. And I'm going to make sure not to,
try to do things different. Right. That's super important. I 100% agree with that. I'm, like I said, my parents are conservative. My mother is a Southern woman. She was one of 10 children. It's yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Period. Like I don't want to hear. And my dad was raised in a military family by Southern Californians. It was still no nonsense, but there was a little more room for, okay, let's have a discussion. Why do you think it's this way? And my mother and I have had these conversations on why we believe why the culture was the way it is in raising our children, and sorry, I'm reading some of these comments that are coming up. I'm like, what is happening here? But I think, where was I? So my mother was hardcore, you do what you're told. But at the same time, my mother was one of 8 girls, and all 8 of them were molested by a family member.
Oh yeah.
A couple of them were victimized more often than others, because so she was hyper aware. Now, I didn't know this. This wasn't something I knew until I was in my 20s.
Because you don't
had the conversation,
stuff like that.
Right. The only if having and being a child, I don't understand. But all I know is my mother ain't playing about me being all up in some grown man's face. I don't really know why, but she would. What's wrong with you? Don't be hugging up all on them. Look at you. Look at yourself. You look like a grown woman. Don't be all up in no grown man face, because he not always gonna be thinking about how sweet a little girl you are, and he don't always equate you to his daughter. That's not always what a grown man looks at you like. That's not what he's gonna see when he sees you, and you need to understand that. And so that made me aware.
That that's even said in that direction, because you have to be the one to safeguard yourself, not that adults, whether it be a man or woman, we are being told as children, individuals, that we have to be the one to protect ourselves from other people, and not that we are being protected because I'm a child or because I'm, that's weird. But she had to give it to you that way, because then you would be the person to watch out for yourself.
Right. And I'm seeing someone who's saying, where does tradition fit in? If you're talking about tradition and child raising, I mean, I think each person develops that tradition for themselves. There are things that my parents did that I'm not going to do. I'm just not. Let's speak on something that's happening in my house right now. We are working on wetting the bed. I am sick to death of washing sheets almost every morning, washing clothes every day. I'm tired of it. My parents dealt with it by beating me. I'm not going to do that. I don't think that this is something that I want to cause pain on my child for. I don't think that I should have, but that's me. My parents raised me the way that they did. I am now making a different choice, but I still think that the punishment I exact is as severe. My son has a lot of trouble being told, no, you can't turn on YouTube today. What, mommy? But no. Because remember, you were the one who decided to lay in your bed last night and take a pee, right? You were one who didn't want to get up. You were too comfortable. So we're gonna make you a little uncomfortable. You don't get to do whatever you want today. You got to do this and that. Come on in here and help me wash these clothes, because that's the other thing you're going to do. I'm not doing this no more. You come in here and you touch your own little pee-pee stuff and you put it in here. So, I am taking a different approach. Am I still holding up the tradition of having zero tolerance, of not allowing this? Yes. Am I doing it in a different way and approaching it differently so that my child's mental, the way that he deals with things is different? He doesn't immediately jump to violence, that he learns maybe talking it through and finding different ways of exercising and doing things is a little different. I don't have to immediately try to punch you in the face. I can talk to you about it.
Right.
So,
So we're having some questions come through, and a lot of them, shout out to Miss Alexis, Miss Skinner. One of the questions, and I'll go back, and it says, where does tradition fit in then? So in terms of what we have been doing and how we have been addressing it, how do we address this in terms of the tradition that it has been in our community for that rite of passage? How do we address that in our families, in our circles of friends, and when we have these individuals that feel the need to push Black boys to doing this? How do we address the traditional or the hand me down, the legacy side of it?
I'll let Isaiah speak. I spoke all last time.
Oh, okay. I mean, we need to recognize that all traditions aren't good. Some traditions are harmful, and we can't be afraid to speak up against like our parents or our cousins or our family members. That's the problem. If it's a tradition that's passed down from grandma or grandpa, if we speak negatively about it, we're seen as disrespectful. So
Right.
people need to they need to stop being afraid to speak out and, saying that all traditions aren't good traditions. Some traditions definitely need to be broken. When it comes to the matter of like sex, and sex is a rite of passage as far as a tradition goes, the conversation that we need to have is that, even though it is tradition for, young boys, okay, you're supposed to go out and you got to go have sex with a girl and you have to start at around 12. We need to have like the conversations that, okay, every boy isn't going to be interested in the same thing. You don't need to, number one, just because you believe something, you don't need to pressure someone else into doing it. And if you're being pressured, you need to know that it's okay to say no. You can have body autonomy. Your body belongs to you. It doesn't matter what the kids at school are doing. It doesn't matter what your older brother is doing. It doesn't matter what your cousins are doing. You don't have to do that same thing. And you don't have to feel ashamed that you're not doing that same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the kind of conversations that need to happen.
I agree.
So the next one was, how then do children learn appropriate social cues? And to me, I'll translate. Well, for me, either of you can kind of translate that for yourselves. But for me, when things aren't comfortable, or when someone's putting you in a position to make you feel like, well, if you don't do this, I'm gonna tell XYZ, or I'm gonna tell everybody you gay, or like, how do we then teach children how to kind of fight back against those social norms? I'll use social norms, or Alexis use social cues.
Like I said, I talked to my son. Because before I had children, I had the conversation with my mother where I understood why she raised me the way she did and why she used the language she did with me.
Right.
And understanding that, and then being in foster care, and in education, and understanding how often children are just left out on their own without protection. I decided from a very early age that I was never going to be afraid to have this conversation. Another thing that helped me, and I have to say this, is I was a peer mediator for Planned Parenthood. So at 15 and 16, I learned a lot about sex, about sexual behavior, about engaging in sexual behavior, what is appropriate, what isn't, what space you should and shouldn't give people. So as a teenager, I understood a lot of things that my fellow students didn't, because no one was giving them a proper education. And especially in Florida. Florida is the South. It's very much, Jacksonville in particular, you're growing up completely ignorant. The only people who teach you about sex, if your parents are concerned about you, is people who are concerned about your safety, or people who are trying to take advantage of you. People in the middle are trying not to think about it, right? So I decided from a very young age that this is a conversation I was never going to be afraid to have, no matter how uncomfortable I was. And I learned early how to have a conversation with somebody who thinks like a kid. So I've always been prepared. But one of the things that I do, I definitely spend a lot of time talking to adults, especially women who had children at a young age, teenage moms, and asking grown women who were teenage moms, what conversations are you having with your daughters? Are you having conversations with your daughters? Because if you think that things are different, they're not. And it amazes me the number of women who don't. The number of women who have teenage daughters, who had daughters as a teenager, who do not talk about it. Or if there is a conversation, the conversation is, ooh, we're just gonna pray about it. We're gonna go to Jesus. Okay, I'm gonna let y'all know Jesus don't trump hormones ever. Jesus don't trump hormones. He don't. I love Jesus. Whoo, but Jesus don't trump hormones. Not in the mind of a teenager who thinks they're gonna live forever. And so you can't talk to them like they don't think they're going to live forever. You can't talk to them like they don't think that the situation is going to last forever. Even the most mature and connected of teenagers, really, there's no the connection to immortality, to this decision can change the entire course of the rest of your life. But education is something that I've always felt very strongly about, always worked really hard to be a part of. So this is a conversation you have to have. And if you are afraid to have the conversation, find someone who isn't, that you trust.
Yes.
And be present. Be present for the conversation so that your child knows you know at least as much as they do, and that if they have questions, they can then come to you. Because if you are present, you might be able to get a little insight into where your kid is. You may see a little of yourself. And then you might understand, okay, you know what, maybe I do know how to help you. Maybe these are some of the courses. Or you can say, you know what, let's go back and have that conversation with that person again. I'm gonna be there for you, baby, but mommy can't do it by herself, or daddy can't do it by himself. I need help. And
present issue is just before you finish, that being present as a parent, that part is very important, because often I grew up with a single mom, and whenever there would come up an issue, she would send me to my uncle Johnny, or never one of her brothers, because she knew they were knuckleheads. But it was always one of her uncles or somebody in my school, a coach or something, she would send me to. But it would be me and that other person. She was never there. So when I would have issues as an adult, I didn't feel comfortable going to her. I would go to those other people versus going to her, because it was a disconnect on who was supposed to help me with certain things.
And as much as you may trust another person with, and you think that you guys have the same values, there may be some things that you feel very strongly about that they don't. And in having a conversation with your kid, they may brush it off, and you're like, whoa, stop. You can't brush that off. No, because not everyone has the same experiences. So, you have to educate your child. You brought them here. You made the choice to bring them here. You have to invest. And if you can't invest directly, find someone who's willing to help you. There are a million people who are educators who spend their life trying to figure out the best way to communicate with children, to make sure that they understand what they need to understand about the world at the level that they are.
Doug Goldman says, let's not forget that you can't teach a group of people who are not interested in learning. Kids who are too grown can't hear the lesson being conveyed. Even still, we have to keep trying.
Yes.
And I as an educator and somebody who just likes an issue for me, because do we continue to teach them? But I know some of the things that my mother has said to me, even in this moment of being in quarantine, are now coming true. Keep your home clean, keep your body. Sorry about the business. But they're starting to remain true. So we have to then do more than just the social skills. We got to start telling them about hard issues. It was well known in my family that my aunt was molested by another family member, but that was never taught to us. I mean, it's not about gossiping, but it should have been taught to us, not just not allowing us to go over that person's home or be alone with that person. You need to say it, because then we need to start understanding what's the makeup of somebody who does this, and being able to spot those people out in public. We can come back to you, Amma, but do you want to touch on that a little bit, Isaiah?
I mean, I don't know if I can add anything new past what you said about it. So, I mean, I don't think I can add anything new that wouldn't be different than what you're saying about it.
is there still a level of discomfort in talking about this and bringing up? And I want to kind of narrow in on what the scope of this conversation is, and specifically speak to young black men, because if we don't begin to hone in on that population, we'll continue to have R. Kellys. We'll continue to have people who won't respect
Hurt people
their
who hurt people.
right. We won't do
Hurt
it, and we
people who
keep
hurt
thinking
people.
they'll grow out of it, or it won't affect them, or they won't be that person. That's not gonna be my child. We keep saying that, but people are growing up confused as to what sexuality is, what sexual roles are, and being dominant because we watched a movie that said just because a woman says no doesn't mean that she means no. It means I gotta try harder, or I gotta earn a little bit more money, or have a little bit more power, and then she'll say yes. And then even she say no, I gotta push harder. But this idea of uh, forcing young men into sexual situations that they are not
Mm.
mentally ready for. My hormones may be saying, yeah, I want to do this. Peer pressure may be encouraging them, but they're not mentally ready for the responsibility that goes along with this. And I'll preface all that by saying, is this conversation still uncomfortable to have in 2020?
I mean, it shouldn't be, but unfortunately, it is. I mean,
Hmm.
I don't understand why it's not uncomfortable, or I don't understand why it is uncomfortable to have this situation. I mean, or to have these conversations.
I think that
Right.
goes. I think that goes back to tradition. I think you don't talk about sex with your children. I think that's been. I think that has always been a thing. You don't talk about sex with your children. You don't talk about Uncle Jimmy, who's the confirmed bachelor, who's been living with his friend Tony for the last 15 years. You don't. You
Mhm.
don't have these conversations. Um, and I mean, and it's it. The more we begin to break down those walls, then the less room the enemy has to move. If you're walking through a room full of walls, nobody can see what you're doing. But if you've knocked down all the walls and there is nothing but lines of communication, you have nowhere to hide. You have nowhere to
Mhm.
put yourself. And then now we have to deal with you. So now that's the other part of it, right? Is dealing with this individual who has hinted a couple times on the post that Isaiah made. We should all follow the same group.
Yeah.
Mhm.
um, Therapy is a necessity for African Americans. Therapy is a necessity for African Americans. Therapy is a necessity for African Americans. I can't say it enough. You need to find an objective individual who can help you understand, someone who has been trained in how the brain works and why it works the way it does, who can help you begin to understand why your brain might work the way it does and why you feel the way you do, and begin to understand why these things may not be okay, or why these things most definitely are not okay. I remember posting on someone's post, somebody was like, well, that's just what happens. So that's what happens to men. And I replied to that. And the first part of my response was, I'm sorry that nobody valued your innocence, but
Mm.
I don't think it's okay for you to diminish the innocence of another. We have to protect the innocence, especially of young black men, because it is far too often ripped from them way too early. And his response to that was, "You sound dumb," and I was just like, "What?" What? Wow. Like how hurt have you been that you completely devalue the innocence of another human being? Why are you, and how do you not see yourself as a predator? You're not the same kind of predator as somebody who goes out and actively hurts kids, but you definitely you're one of the people who keeping the walls up so that the enemy can move within the darkness. You can't.
But I've learned to develop in dealing with it. Like, yeah, I was 9. My older cousin, let me play with his girlfriend's stuff when I was 9. Like, I mean, it didn't affect me. I mean, I started having sex with everybody that came along, but it didn't affect. They don't see
The
the
problem.
result of that ideal because as men, we supposed to do certain things. We supposed to, have certain things. I remember I've had facial hair since fourth grade. And it was always a running joke. Oh, he out there eating that pussy. That's what he doing. And it was embarrassing because I know I wasn't doing this. I felt like I was being lied on because it became a joke within my, amongst my, I have uncles around my age. So it became
Right.
a joke with them. And it was uncomfortable to me because I was like, I ain't doing that. Like, because I didn't want my mother to think that's what I was doing. And
Right.
and it was, to me, it was just a lie. I was immature at the time. I thought it was just a lie, but we really is so many broken people, and I think what I'm trying to do now is expose that male issue because we have so many groups and loving groups out there that are there for women to kind of talk about these things and hash them out and get support, but for men it's the barbershop. And even within situations like
And that's not
you gotta
necessarily a
fake.
safe space. Right.
Right,
Yeah,
you gotta
barbershop
fake
is
as
so
if,
problematic.
yeah, you
It's not
gotta fake
necessary.
like I'm in on this conversation. I've learned how to say and just keep getting my head cut and just move on from the conversation. Like I don't even add anything to it, and I feel crazy for not saying y'all men, y'all predators or y'all. But I'm glad now we have the vocabulary to be
Mm.
able to give to people. I mean, I think it's being overused and misused, but people are being triggered. People are going through trauma. People understand problematic behavior. People
Mm-hmm.
understand generational dysfunction and toxic masculinity and toxic femininity. We understand those things, and now children now have better vocabularies than I don't know how old you are, Isaiah, but I know for
29.
me, but we have
Oh.
better we have better we have a better sense of words now, and I see even adults are now overusing and misusing these words because
They're
we've
excited. They
been
know something.
right, we
Oh, I
know
get it.
something. And that thing that was wrong with me that I knew what it was, I just didn't have a word for it. It's
Mm.
now it's being put out there. And now I have this thing to be able to call. I was so proud of that aunt that I have when she started getting therapy because it really affected her behavior. She has a criminal record because she didn't know how to act out some of those feelings and emotions so everybody could get it. Anybody
Mm.
could get it. And she was very territorial over her children. Like very territorial over her children.
That's what
And we
happens.
have to
My mother
stop.
is that way,
Right. Like it
especially with
became
me. My
right.
mother, there there are a handful of her friends who asked one too many. Why you? Okay, okay, all right. My mother was very protective of me, very,
hmm
very. Is
So
still.
so one of the last comments that came through was it's uncomfortable for children to have these conversations? Do we let children or the idea of children define what's comfortable and what's not comfortable
Mm,
in terms of a life lesson that you need? Do we let them determine what's comfortable or not?
I think the parent sets the tone. There are lots of
mm,
things that kids are going to find uncomfortable. Say you got a kid that doesn't know about hygiene. It's going to be
Mm,
uncomfortable for him to have that conversation, but that doesn't mean that that should stop you. Like, no, you
right.
got to take a shower.
right,
Yes.
right.
Now,
Like,
as in
And
right now.
and speaking as somebody who sometimes had trouble communicating with her parents about certain things. Again, I advocate you find someone you trust, and there I go again. All right,
You
find
good.
someone you trust to be able to have that conversation. And then be there for it. Don't just like, all right, y'all go and do that. I'm gonna go over here. No, 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 because that's your child. You are responsible for making sure that they uphold the values that you put in them. You can't let
Mhm.
somebody else put values in them and be like, oh no, what happened? You weren't there. That's what happened. You didn't show up to make sure that what you want, the person you want your child to be, doesn't. You have to sow those seeds. You have to sow those seeds. And you get help when you need it. Admit when you need help. It
Right.
is
oh yeah, parents don't like that though.
mm-mm.
Like,
I
it's been
get
my
it. That's your
experience.
kid. You want to be, but you got to admit when you are in over your head, because sometimes you are just that.
Yeah, but in the
Well,
Black community, I feel like parents don't like to admit that, because then if somebody else tells them anything, it's like, oh, well, don't tell me how to raise my kids.
this
Right.
mine,
They get ashamed,
this
like,
mine.
yeah, so nobody else can tell them but me. And if I need help, I'm not gonna let them know, because then somehow it makes me a lesser parent. Like, if a kid comes to me and I don't know how to fix their problem, it makes me a lesser parent because I don't know how to fix their problem.
Right.
Like,
But
Which
some
is
of them have gone through that. Some of them have gone through it themselves, and nobody was there for them. So I can't expect for somebody who did not get the answers to then give the answers. But at some point,
mm,
when you 3 and 4 children into the world, at some point you will have to say, well, you know what, I need to go get this answer for me. And I see a lot of that now, but we can't just keep sending our children out into the world every day at any age without any type of foundation.
right.
Like, we can't. I am 36, and I've never had a conversation with my mother about sex. Never. And I don't blame my mother, because she's probably listening. She's probably going to message me after this. But I don't blame her, but it wasn't something that happened in our family. We didn't say I love you to each other. We only hugged at funerals and only cried when somebody died. Like, it wasn't. There are a lot of things that don't happen, and for me, I'm having to, at this age, find healing and ways to outlet some of the things I've seen and gone through. And we see it in our families, and we choose not to say anything. One, because nobody was there for me when I went through that, or I don't want to make this child uncomfortable, or I wish some of the things that people thought I was doing, they checked me on it, because it would have made me think twice before I did it again or did it at all. But
Right.
I don't think we give our children enough credit to realize how smart and how intelligent and how resilient they are, and how
Mm.
much they need guidance. Children need
Yes.
guidance. That's why there are
Need it.
legal laws that mandate we we parent our children. There are legal rules for parents and how they should raise their children, because they would be in a sweatshop somewhere working at 5. So there are
Right.
legal rules that says you cannot do these things to children, and this is how you must raise your child. Now, what's missing from that are the
To crop up and continues to spread whatever horrible things they are. And it is our job to say, hey, hey, cut that
right,
shit out. Sit
yeah,
down. Let's talk
hmm
about what happened to you so we can fix you, because you can stop hurting other people, because we can't let you keep doing that.
right. As a
You
black
know?
man in the school system, I used to be offended by how I had to. A child runs up. I teach babies, so children will hug you on a daily basis whenever they see you. And
Hmm.
I've had to learn how to adjust myself, but it was uncomfortable for the adjustment, because I know children need hugs, but
Hmm.
somebody broke that rule enough for them to make a rule that I have to extend one arm and hug them on the side of my hip, because somebody crossed the line. It wasn't me, but somebody crossed that line. So now we got to have blanket processes for how we handle children and how we love children. And that's weird to me, but rules are there for a reason. They're there, and this is so much bigger than Boosie. I know it is, because I have 6 uncles who all encouraged me to get pussy, like, and showed me how to do it, and talked about. And I saw the revolving door of women in and out of our homes, and I heard the conversation, and I was, the whole idea of me having facial hair from a young age, that was uncomfortable. So I would shave it off, because I didn't want that to be who I was perceived to be.
Hmm.
Having these male perspectives that didn't quite add up to what I was being taught on this side, and what I naturally felt. Um, a lot of the kind of questions that we're getting from some of the other platform just equal up to, how do I how do I have that conversation? I think Alma answered that earlier. If you can't do it, be present in helping somebody else to support your child through that. Uh,
Right. There are
and
lots
that
of people who are trained to do it. I highly, highly recommend just from my own personal life and the experiences I've had, I highly recommend Planned Parenthood. There are places that have counselors that will be happy to sit down with you and your child, or to sit down with you and educate you and teach you how to do it so that you can go back. If you're not comfortable with if you're not comfortable with having it, but with having the conversation yet, but you don't want anyone else involved, go and get educated. Like I said, because of my own personal experiences and my background, I highly recommend Planned Parenthood, but they are not the only place that does that. A lot of times you can go to your child's school and talk to the guidance counselor, and they can point you in the right direction. Because there are people who purposely go out to say, hey, nobody talked to me. As a result of that, I was taken advantage of by everybody. Let me help you know how to teach your child. Let me help you teach your child so that they are also not taken advantage of.
Many of the schools now, especially the public schools, are putting into place, and they're not even called guidance counselors anymore. These are therapists that are specifically there to help with behavioral issues. And now a lot of the schools are now incorporating giving those services or extending those services to parents, because now I, as a teacher or just a faculty member, can't say this child has to go to this therapy. We have to then bring that issue up, and that therapist has to then contact the parent and ask permission before they can even give that child any information. So they're going to continue to have these types of people connect with our children and give our children answers that are inappropriate, because we are choosing not to address issues. We're choosing not to tell our children what's wrong, because it's mighty interesting. Dwayne Wade's, I believe that's his ex-wife or his baby mother, came out against Dwayne Wade and Gabrielle Union's choice of embracing their child's right, and giving them that information. But I have not heard from any of the mothers of Little Boosie. And maybe they're being paid well, I don't know, but I haven't heard from any of those mothers. I'll be interested to feel how they feel about knowing that their children at some point, and it's unclear whether the children were all in the same room, or if the dad was in the same room, or how. But no matter how it broke down, it was inappropriate. But I'm really curious to understand what the mothers of these children, or if they're his sisters or brothers' children, because he said his nephews, what they feel about this. Because it's being reported that a family member reported him to CPS after all this. But did you just find this out?
Right. There's no way you just no, there's no way. There's no way. I have a really hard time believing that. Yeah.
So we have a couple more minutes. We've actually been on here for an hour and a half. So I'm really excited. I already knew where Alma stood on this, but it was interesting to me to find Isaiah online, and I think we were all in that same group, and it was just, to me, just the comments alone, it broke me, because one, is that why some of my family members didn't say anything to me or interrupted that type of behavior? Or, why didn't that uncle who found out or was told by that adult, why didn't he check him? Or why didn't he come to me in a different manner? So I'm weirded out, one, because I discovered a lot of people who I thought were stand-up, conscious-minded individuals are trigger points in our community. They keep this ideal going, and it was shocking to me. The people who I haven't reached out to them yet, but I was shocked. I was thoroughly shocked.
The way that sex and power and men, that triangle is such a crazy thing. I'm a book reader, and one of my favorite authors is a woman named Octavia Butler, and she talks in one of her books. She has a 3-part series about, basically, it's a beautiful, intricate story that basically boils down to human beings have a hierarchical society. If And because of that, it is in our DNA. It is inevitable that we will destroy ourselves because of that, because we are unable to see each other as equals. We need to be able to see ourselves above other people. Everybody does. And for those who don't see themselves above other people, they're either truly enlightened and see everyone as an equal, or they see everyone putting down on them and they're angry and they're mad and they will lash out at some point.
Right.
You know, the French Revolution happened. That was a thing. She said, let them eat cake. You know what I'm saying? Then the people were like, oh, we got your cake. And they broke down the gates with their bare hands. So at some point, it has to become one or the other. We will either all see each other as equals, and we will all be able to exist in a whole nother way, on a whole nother level. I'm a Trekkie. I have this beautiful dream of one planet. But anyway, or we will destroy each other in the name of I will be better than, I must be better than, I have to prove myself better than. And it is something that I am fascinated by as an actor and a watcher of people. And you know, I am raising two men, or at least trying to, and I want them to be. I know what I want them to be. I want them to be respectful and honest and intentional human beings. I want them to be, you know, I want them to be a place where people say, hey, that over this person here, man, there's some safety right there, period. You know, they know how to protect all the people, whether I like you or not. You know what? Let's sit down and have this conversation. Let's talk. Let's see where you're coming from, because I want to understand you, because you are also a human being who has experiences and expectations, and you have had a journey. So let me hear about that journey and how you got to where you are, and let's see if we can figure out how we can find some common ground. You know, and so I'm doing my best to do that, and I understand that it is extremely, extremely difficult to do that for men in particular. And so I do my best. I pray. Those are the things that I do. I try not to back away from any conversation, no matter how uncomfortable it is for me. Anyone who has ever met my oldest, Ezekiel is to be taken seriously. At 3, 4, he'll be 7 this year. He has always been, no. I know I'm a kid, but I'm talking to you, so listen to me, because what I'm saying matters. And so that is my experience as a parent. I have a child who is to be taken seriously. So I don't joke. I don't kid. I very rarely tease him. He don't do a lot of teasing. He don't like it. Okay, all right, cool. We gonna have a conversation. I will respect you. You will respect me. All right, let's do this. And you have to adjust for who you know who your child is, and you try to just do your best to instill your values. You know, he's a cute little kid, and he likes girls. He always has. Like he just always has. All his best friends have been girls. He likes girls. So, you know, we had the moment where he decided he wanted to put his hands on somebody, and we had to have that conversation. He got punished for violating my rules. I don't care what she said, what she didn't say. I don't care about none of that. I told you this is appropriate touch and this is inappropriate touch. What you did was inappropriate, right? We had that conversation, right? Yes. Okay. So now there's punishment for breaking my rule. And that's it. Not punishment for liking the girl, for wanting to be a boy.
The natural feeling.
Right. Not for the natural feeling, for breaking the rule that I set in place, because that's there to teach you. That's there to protect you and her. That's not there to tell you can't have fun. You know, that's there to tell you, listen, this is okay and this isn't okay for where you are right now. And we have these conversations regularly. I was really upset, but you know, children, they on the playground, they're out there listening to songs, talking to each other, and I don't have any control over what other kids' parents teach them. So all I can do is focus on my own.
So I have a couple questions. Well, just one main question for you all. If you could speak to little Boosie right now, what would you ask him, or what advice would you give him, or without putting your hands on him, Amma, what advice would you then give to little Junior? What question would you have for him? I'll start off. My
I need a
main
minute. Give me
question
a
would
minute.
be my main question to him would be, who hurt you? Who was it that hurt you, and you now are manifesting this outward in your bravado, in your
I don't know that I would use the word hurt, because that could be the kind of thing that would fit. I wasn't hurt because there's still an understanding that has to come to him. So it's a question of what happened. Tell me about your experience, and then to begin to understand. Okay, now let me put that in perspective for you. What happened? Let's look at it in a different way. Let's turn it around. Let's shine a different light. Let's change the paradigm.
You gonna give him that Jean Levan Zach type of love? Okay.
Listen, I'm trying to grow as a person. Trying to let love be my light. Hello. But I think that is the question, is please tell me about what happened, your experience, and what made you feel like this is what, because his experience, maybe nobody taught me anything and I stumbled through everything, and I just told myself I was never going to let that happen to the next person. If I had the chance, I was going to help them and show them everything from jump. Well, you don't need to know everything from jump. So let's step back and talk about what is probably appropriate and what isn't appropriate for age groups and maturity levels. And if your kid understands this, then they're most likely ready to understand that. But if they don't understand this, then you need to take a step back and teach them some stuff from back here, right?
Right.
So, I think I would.
Before we get to Isaiah, sorry, Amma. Doug says we will never universally be universally equal, as long as greed, competition, ego, and pride exist. Best we can do is fix self and try to unify the like-minded.
I don't think yes. I as an actor, I don't necessarily think that greed, pride, and ego are bad things. I think they need balance. You have to balance pride with humility. You have to balance ego with humility. You have to balance those things with humility, understanding, okay, we're all human. We all make mistakes. I don't make mistakes in this area. You make all the mistakes in this area. Let me help you, because I make all the mistakes in this area and you ain't made none yet. So help me out. We have to, I don't think that pride, ego, and what was the other word he used? Sorry. I don't think those are necessarily greed. I don't think those are necessarily bad things. They can be bad, but I think that in just everything has the potential to not be good for you. Anyone who's familiar with the TV show This Is Us, and Randall's character, Randall's addiction is his goodness. Yeah, your goodness, being good, can get you in a whole lot of trouble. Okay. And no one wants you to not be good, but you got to balance it. You can't say yes to everything. You know what I mean? You can't be there. And this is something that you, Nate, and I both, we know, we have learned this lesson. I can't be yes to everybody. I have to say no. You have to learn balance is necessary in everything. And I think that that's the reality, right? If every human being begins to understand their balance, then they begin to understand other people. Oh, that you're out of whack. Okay, I can have empathy for you. I can sympathize with that because I understand what it is to be out of whack. It took me a while to find balance. Are you interested in finding balance? Okay, well then now I know how I'm going to relate to you moving forward.
You sound like a Jehovah's Witness. Are you ready for the word of Jesus? But in a perfect world, that is awesome. But bringing it, scaling it down to where we are now, just empowering our young people to be able to say no and feel comfortable in their no. Isaiah, you want to piggyback on that question?
Okay, so yeah, if I were to have a conversation with Bootsy, I mean, the first thing I would ask him is, well, number one, does he understand what rape is and what pedophilia is? I would ask him if he had an understanding of that. Um, I would ask him, you know, I don't know if he has daughters or, well, actually, yeah, he does have a
He
daughter.
does.
I would ask him if his daughter was 12 and was the same age as her son, and you were training your daughter to be, you know, heterosexual. Would part of that training include you hiring an adult man to do what you hired the adult woman to do to your sons? That would be my question for him. I'll definitely encourage him. Okay, maybe you need to think back to when you were that age, and you need to think about, you know, why it is that you make the choices with your children today. Think about what happened to you in your past, and, you know, explore it a little bit. I would definitely tell him that, and then I would also tell him that, you know, everybody is different. People reach sexual maturity and their interest in sexuality, they reach it at different ages. It doesn't always have to be at 12 and 13. And just because they're doing it at different ages doesn't mean that, you know, they're not going to be interested in sex. It just means that everybody is different. You don't have to put the age limit on, okay, you know, you have to start at 12. And then the last thing I think I would tell him is that no matter how much you try to control your kids, your children are going to be what they're going to be, no matter what you do to them. And the only thing that you're doing, if you're encouraging them to have sex at an early age, you're just introducing trauma into their lives. That trauma is not going to make them gay or straight. It's just, they're going to be what they're going to be. But you need to understand that what you're doing, it's harmful. So not only are they going to be gay or straight, they're going to be gay or straight with the baggage that you created.
Amen.
I appreciate both of you having that energy. And I had a couple that I actually wanted to bring in on this. And unfortunately, I think one of them was like, no, that's not a good look for us, because they had opposites perspectives. They were also in that group conversation where I first saw your message, Isaiah, and it was really interesting to hear. We talked on the phone. It was interesting to hear why they felt that way. And at the end of the day, it was a lack of information, awareness, and just understanding, sympathy to the actual child. This is what I want. It's not really in this moment, and I'm projecting a life, and nobody wants their child to be looked at as different or odd or weird. Nobody wants that. And I think as Black people, we try to shelter ourselves and try to shapeshift ourselves into the best representation of a person, because we wanted others to be able to understand us and to accept us. And all this deals with acceptance. It's just far extremes of what we're willing to sacrifice and say and do in the habit. And being a child who was violated, and I can strongly stand in that now, and having moved past it in many aspects of it, I feel validated in where we are right now. I feel validated in my perspective, and this is wrong. I'm saying punishment, because I think in that punishment, I can't just send you to jail, because now I think that was what Boosie problem was already. He did something wrong. They sent him to jail. He came back out hardened and hardened, and triggered
Traumatized
by his experiences. And now I don't want that. I don't want to see that. I don't want that for me and my children and my family. I don't. So I think we need to find healthier solutions. So I think creating these trigger centers where people are really learning how to be parents and be productive citizens, and learning what the results, just like they've had in many centers around the world. They have these centers for Black people that are trying to transition their mindset state out of that African slavery mentality, and I forgot the name of the centers, but they are kind of shifting us out of that. And as they're filled with therapy and history and all those things, I think the same thing needs to be done on the side of, and that probably can be incorporated in that whole sexual uh, identity issue that we have with ourselves and how we rear and raise children and our own children. So
Mm.
this conversation is necessary for me, and it's something that I need as a black man to hear other people's validate my perspective, because we can't all be, the creepy man that's out to get one, to bust one off. And
Mm.
I can't allow, even for this gentleman, I can't allow him to kind of shrink his whole existence on getting head and that being the best thing about life. But thank you both. Thank you, Alma. Thank you, Isaiah. And Isaiah, he's doing his first show, and I hope to hear his perspective a lot more. We got plenty of time and space, sir. Just go
Mhm.
live. If you need help, I definitely support you in doing so. And same to you,
I
always.
appreciate it.
And this platform is always open to you whenever you have a moment. If you want to continue the conversation, if you have a new perspective on it, just hit me up, Isaiah, and we can do it. The door has always been open for you. But
I mean,
I'm purposely doing this right now to give us a voice where people are allowed to have their opinions, but we have to counteract that with what we feel. So there's balance in the conversation, and we just have some resolve and lessons
Right.
learned at the end of it, and not just an argument, and we all sitting here exhausted and
And nothing
dehydrated because
productive
we've
has happened.
argued. Right,
Right.
right. So, any last minute remarks? Anything you want to say in conjunction with this topic, this message, or just something you just want to get off your chest at the moment?
I mean,
Ah.
for me, I've been having that same argument since Sunday, so I don't need to add that
Hmm.
into here. What I will say is that I'm definitely interested. If you do a part two, and there's the other side of this, I would
Yeah.
definitely be interested in wanting to be a part of that conversation because, like I said,
Hmm.
I really want to hear the logic behind that. You know,
Right.
I really want to hear. I want to hear how somebody's going to justify that. So definitely, and I'm not saying it in an argumentative way, but I definitely want to be a part
I
of that
just want to understand. I
conversation.
want to hear. I want right. I need understanding. I need understanding. I
Because
need
there's
like
even
I
levels
need.
of that. It's levels to it. It's levels of people who feel that way. Because some people, like, it's a boy, like he just getting his dick sucked, like it ain't gonna kill him. But then there are people who are really mindset on, I gotta make this happen for my child, because if I don't, he gonna be fucking gay, and I'm not having that. Like, it's so
And
it's
it's
the
such a
hood extremes and
crazy,
everything in between.
crazy reason. Such a crazy reason. You have no control. When I tell you from Jump Street, Ezekiel liked girls, I'm talking about as a baby, he's smiling women's face.
Hmm.
What is boy sit down somewhere with your pamper? So I mean, there's nothing you can do. It's just there. It is what it is.
Right,
And
right,
in
Right.
a society where everything where heterosexuality is the overwhelming norm, it takes homosexuality to it takes it a little while to peak, to understand itself, to go, oh, I'm a little different than what the overwhelming majority is. Okay, now what do I do? How do I deal? It amazes you, and it amazes me how many people don't realize it. I'm going to end with a story from a comedian who I'm a huge fan of. I can't think of her name right now, but she's very stocky, curly-haired white woman, like your typical lumberjack-looking lesbian, right? She grew up in Oklahoma. She was the youngest of 7 kids, all boys. So she grew up in a house with a bunch of boys. I don't think any of that had anything to do with her sexual proclivity. She herself did not realize that she was a homosexual until she watched a movie on Lifetime in her early 20s while she was on the road as a comedian. So she was
mm,
well into living her life and moving forward. And she was like, I don't understand why I'm having so much trouble dating. I have so much issues with relating, getting to know, finding men that I like. And then suddenly it dawns on her as she's watching this movie, oh, that's my issue. I like women. And then she goes to come out to her family and they're like, well, yeah, duh. How did you not know? We all knew. So conversations need to be had. All of that to say you have to talk to your children. You have to talk to them. And if you can't, then you have to find someone who can. And then be there to learn how, because it's that information is still your responsibility. If your child goes and does some horrible stuff, we're going to look at you like, well, what did you put into them? I don't know. I sent him off to have that conversation with so-and-so. I don't know what happened. Well, you weren't there. You got to be there. So,
and there's no one way. There's no one answer. There's no one direct approach. Depending on who your child is, depending on who you are, depending on what this type of person you are, is no one answer to the solution.
right.
And I want this to be kind of a balance to the conversations that are going out there where people are just going at each other, but just let's see what your perspective is, because that makes me understand why you're making the choices that you're making and why you feel the way you're feeling. But again, let's figure out ways to be able to counterbalance just hiring a prostitute. That's not the answer, but in any faith or shape or form, it's not. So let's figure this out on a different level. And I'm gonna, as I do, challenge the people who say things, Mr. Isaiah, and I'm gonna put that on you. Like, you tell me what a part two of this would look like, and I'm here to support you and create the platform and develop the conversations. I want people to have their voice. I don't want to keep orchestrating it, because it's always going to be from the self-righteous Nate's perspective. But I want it to really be from other people's point of view, because this is an issue that for me is serious. I personally know the trauma and the triggers and the damage that can happen when a child is introduced to sex and you make decisions for children in the wrong way, for your own personal needs and your own personal ego. I understand those things, and I just want solutions. I don't want this to happen anymore. I want people like little Boosie not to be shut up, but to be changed and miraculously changed in this moment, because it's not healthy. And I don't believe he really believes that's the best thing for his child. It's the best thing for the brand that he's created. I think that's still the avenue that he's coming from. He doesn't want to be looked at as gay for whatever
Right.
reason, but you're now projecting that on your child. We don't even know your child. So you now
Right.
telling the world that this is what you've done to your child. We not realizing these platforms are permanent structures. Even if I erase this, I can tell you how many people watched this over the 5 platforms that it was broadcast over live. Somebody saw this. So somebody saw what we said and heard what we said. That doesn't go anywhere. It
Right.
doesn't. Like, that stays in somebody's psyche. So now if we would have said anything off the wall, oh, that's how Nate feel. Okay. Oh, I see you, Isaiah. That's how he really feels. Okay, I'm not dealing with him anymore. And I've done that. I've done that in those comment sections. I've made notes. Not inviting that person to my classroom no more. Not having that person on my show no more. Because I don't want that perspective by me. So that's why this platform, Let's Do Lunch, is really there, because a lot of these conversations, I want to be able to have people on that I don't agree with. But for my brand, I cannot promote that attitude. I cannot promote that behavior. But I want to get to the bottom of it. So I'll challenge you, Isaiah, if this is something that you really are passionate about, we on each other's page now. Tell me
Yeah.
what that looks like for you, and we can definitely create that conversation for a part two. I'm into it. I've dedicated my time today to it, so I really want it to be uh, from everybody's perspectives, not just from Nate, because I'm gonna always be like loud and strong in what I feel, and I'm not
Right.
gonna waver from it. But I want it to be a healthier balance of that, so it's not just me orchestrating it. But I challenge you, sir.
Okay.
I
I
put people
mean,
to work. That's what I like
I'll
to
get
do.
I'll give it some serious thought, and I'll see if I can reach out to people that have disagreed with me because there are so many on that post. So I'll start there, and then. But I'm definitely interested in hearing the other side.
I appreciate you, sir. I appreciate you, Arma. I really do. This is needed, and I thank you both for taking time out of your day to join me in this conversation. To everybody out there, thank you. To everybody out there watching, this show, Let's Do Lunch with Nate, comes on every Wednesday at 12 noon. In addition to our radio show, the Artist Exchange, that comes on every Monday and Friday. Even throughout the quarantine, we have been live and doing it every Monday and Friday at 5 p.m. only on BigExposedRadio.com. And in addition to that, I've been doing a lovely series of play readings and just cultural events that are really heartfelt to me, that are close to my heart with the actors and performers. Our next one up is the Real Nigga Show reunion show, a word that means so many different things to so many different people, and the power that we put into it. This isn't the actual show. Unfortunately, I'm now working on the show. Fortunately, I'm working on the show, but unfortunately, because of the coronavirus, all of our events have been postponed and put on hold. So we're having an actual reunion with these gentlemen who have been doing this for almost 15 years now. The show every like 3 or 4 years or so they put on the show again, and this is their 2020 edition, and this one is going to be real good. So we're going to get a snippet of it on the show on Monday. It's being co-hosted by my girl Tracy Jiggets, who is actually the host of the production itself. Sandra Meekins, who is the stage manager, and she was also the stage manager and production crew for Real Nigga Show. We're going to have all the gentlemen, Easy Jackson, Joshua Dixon, Darren Carey, I'm missing Robert Hardy, all these gentlemen that make up who the Real Nigga Show is. We're going to have an awesome conversation with them one-on-one and in groups on Sunday. So tune in live for that. 3 p.m. It is number 5 in our series, and we're keeping it moving. We just finished up the Big Girl Chronicles, and we're jumping right into the Real Nigga Show reunion. If you are a playwright or actor and you want to be a part of the Artist Exchange virtual artist series, please feel free to reach out to me at SceneWork. That's SCENEWURK @gmail.com. Send me your information, your number, and I'm always willing to have a conversation. Again, thank you, Ama, Big Mama Ama, and Mr. Isaiah. Thank you. I appreciate you. And we're going to continue to talk, sir. So, again, thank you all. This is the end of the show. And in addition, so with this, I want to begin to help spotlight many of the culinary artists that are in our communities, both far and near. So send me a link, send me your recipe. I'll try the recipe. I'll try to cook it myself, or I'll have it delivered to me. So please, we want to begin to spotlight restaurants. Once we get out of this, we'll actually be on different locations at actual restaurants. The idea that I started, but because of this, it kind of got grounded. But we're going to find a way to bring it up and pick it up. So again, thank you all. And this has been an awesome show. Peace out.
Peace.
Peace.